Welcome to the Conscious Publicist Podcast, a space where thoughts become ideas to advocate for a more conscious human experience in the media. Our thoughts and ideas inspire action, and the most notable leaders and organizations have transformed thoughts and ideas into global initiatives that have impacted the lives of millions. My name is Ashley Graham, and as a woman-owned business founder and publicist, I guide leaders, visionaries, and creators in discovering their conscious media voice and methodologies that inspire connection, community, and impact through aligned media channels. In this podcast, we'll dive into public relations, thought leadership, business, and entrepreneurship, all through the lens of being a conscious human being. I'll take you behind the scenes into the habits, thoughts, and modalities that have helped leaders shift past paradigms of limiting beliefs, comparison, and self-doubt to show up for themselves to become the subject matter experts they were called to be. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify and join us on this journey of awakening the conscious, enlightened leader within you. Today's episode is one that holds a very special place in my heart. I'm sitting down with Jennifer Imus, a newborn and motherhood photographer who has been doing this work for over 16 years. But here's what makes Jennifer's work so powerful. She's not just capturing beautiful images. She's holding space for mothers during one of the most vulnerable, transformative, and sometimes tumultuous times of their lives. What you're about to hear is an incredible, honest conversation about the realities of motherhood that often don't make it to social media. We're talking about birth trauma, postpartum challenges, the grief that can coexist with joy, and how we as women navigate the complex identities we hold as mothers, partners, professionals, and as individuals. Jennifer and I connected through one of her giveaways, and when we finally met in person after my daughter Avina was born, it felt like meeting someone who truly understood what I was going through. We did not need small talk. We met at the ground floor level where real connection happens. In this conversation, we explore why documentation matters so deeply, how society's expectations shape our birth experiences, and what it means to own our power as women, especially as we transition through different seasons of our life, from new motherhood to the empty nest. Whether you're a new mom, expecting, thinking about motherhood, or simply interested in honest conversations about women's experiences, this episode will resonate with you. We're getting real about the parts of motherhood that aren't always Instagram perfect and why that honesty is so crucial for all of us. Grab your coffee or your tea and let's dive into this beautiful, raw conversation with Jennifer Imus. As you may have heard in my last episode here on the show, I am officially a mama, and my guest today, I'm so excited to bring her influence and her brilliance to the show because she knows exactly what it means to be a passionate mom, following her career and her creative paths. So I am going to introduce our guest today, Jennifer Imus. She is our lovely newborn photographer. And Jennifer, I'm going to go ahead and ask you our $1 million question here on the show. What story and message are you looking to share through your brilliance and your wisdom being a newborn photographer? I can only imagine how amazing it is to do your job.
I have the best job in the world, and I really feel blessed that I get to go to work every day and do what I am truly passionate about. And I think there's two schools for me right now. Is as a women-owned business, I have learned so much over the last 16 years about what it is that I do for my clients. And while it used to be about taking beautiful photos, and that is certainly part of it, it's become more about partnering with the moms that I am honored to work with. And I work alongside doulas and postpartum specialists and community resources to really support them in this transformative and sometimes tumultuous beginning of their motherhood journey. And I believe that from the core of my being that our moms really need to be supported in a way that not a lot of moms are. And I feel really lucky to have found my place in that space and to hold space for those moms so that they can be seen and that they can really begin to celebrate and document this incredible new family that they've just created. And then for me as a mom, I have over the last 23 years gone through so many different identities as a woman, starting with being a new mom, feeling overwhelmed and feeling like I'm never doing enough, I'm not doing it right, to having young children and a husband and trying to manage how do you keep your marriage strong while you're raising children, to then now my newest, which is being in the empty nest and learning what that looks like for me. And also recognizing how society sees us as we get older and what that means when we're no longer the primary caretakers of our children and they're off as being their own women now, and what that looks like for me as a woman in society and what society is telling me what I should be doing now. When the reality is, as we get older and as we get into our 40s and we get into our 50s, society is pretty much telling us, we're not going to see you anymore. And for me, I don't accept that. And part of that journey as a mom has been me recognizing that it's okay for me to now step into the light. And I have been supporting my daughters from the get-go. And I was that mom that was so involved and so in everything and so proud of them. But now it can also be my turn now. So I feel like that's been really interesting stepping into this new identity and also understanding in this new chapter how fleeting it really is. And I say this to my clients all the time. When you are in the empty nest, all you have left are photos. You have photos and you have videos, and that's what you're left with. And, you know, I have a daughter who moved across the country and she's at a different time zone. And of course, I can FaceTime with her. But I have photos and frames hanging in my house. And those are what I cherish now. And for me, even as a photographer, I wish I would have taken more. So that is like one of the biggest takeaways for me is I'm feeling it now, how important it is to document your legacy, document your children, document your family and this unit that you created, and make sure that is a priority as you become a mom.
I love the influence and the energy of what you shared in that. And similar to my most recent episode with Lisa Howcom, we talked about how impactful imagery is when it comes to our self worth, our own identity. But the work that you're doing is even more transformative because you are reflecting and mirroring the new experience, especially for what that means to new moms, myself included. It can be challenging, and maybe this is a good segue into how we got introduced and talking a little bit about the experience that you bring to your clients. But how we got connected, I signed up to one of your giveaways that I had heard about at a local event, and we got connected on social media. And when my daughter Avina was born and the challenges that I went through with that, there was an open door to seeing what the experience was like for me. And when we met in person, it was like we didn't have to do the small talk. We met each other at that ground floor level and found alignments in how both of our journeys, although very different and very unique, we found similarity because we both saw them as very challenging experiences, but we learned so much through that. And I can say that again, when you're working with the photographer to mirror and reflect that identity piece, you really want to work with somebody who can understand you because then they know exactly what they need to capture to bring your essence forward.
Absolutely. And we have talked about how I know your birth story was one that was challenging, and I had the same. And you're left with so many conflicting emotions about what happened and how could I have changed that? And am I at fault? And we as women always look for us to be the champions, right? We're the ones that our children look to. And we're always putting ourselves in that place of how could I have done things differently? How could I have protected my child in that birth experience? And it's taken me a lot of years to recognize that I don't even want to say it as flippantly as this, but it is what it is. Like, I can't change it now. And if I had had all of the information then, I don't even know if I still could have changed what had happened with my daughter. But what I do see all the time with women who are contacting me for newborn shoots. Sometimes moms start off with maternity, so I'm seeing them even earlier. And I see moms who are really unsure and scared, and without the education and without the support and without the community in the village, it becomes a scenario where they're going into this motherhood journey already scared and hesitant, and it makes for their journey to not be what it could be. And again, that's putting judgment on what our journeys were, right? We, of course, we couldn't have changed it if we wanted to, and not everybody has that. But that's one of the reasons why I felt like if I am going to be a motherhood photographer, and one of the reasons why I waited until after my children were out of the house, is I wanted to be 100% in with my clients. I wanted to have touch points where my clients felt seen and they felt supported. And I partner with other motherhood vendors and with doulas and with postpartum support and with breastfeeding support. And we all are together helping our moms with education in the hopes that they don't experience what we experienced. But I've had lots of conversations with doulas, and I've told them my birth experience. And even they have said, we may have been able to help, we may not have been able to help. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, my daughter's 23 now, and it still is like it was yesterday. And I still carry some of that heaviness around my birth experience. And I think as moms, that doesn't leave us easily at all.
It's funny that you mention that because through my birth experience and then what had happened in the first week of postpartum for me, I really thought that the experience was going to impact me significantly long term. And what I'm realizing is there is an ebb and flow
So
to,
it's like with any grief.
yes, to how that works. And I am definitely a friend of grief, but not at a grief at this capacity. Now, the reason why I say that I was under the impression that it might not have lasted as long as it has is because 4 weeks in, the 4 weeks were very challenging, very heavy, was stuck in reliving the experience, a little bit of PTSD from what had happened. And then all of a sudden it started to fizzle. That weight started to fizzle. I started to feel lightness. I started to feel expanded. I started to feel inspired. And I was like, wow, now I can finally be the present mother that I have always knew myself to be, who I always wanted to be. And I started having all of these amazing experiences with my daughter, really connecting with her and being like, wow, I am so glad that is behind me. But come week 11 into week 12, it started really coming back. And being a self mastery advocate, I know that things come back in different seasons because there's something else to learn. There's a reminder or a lesson to experience again. And what I've been sitting with recently, and again, I love how I can speak from this presently because it's still very active for me at the moment, that emotion. And it's really showing me the dynamic and the depth that I have as a person and as a mother, and how I can hold two truths at once. I can still honor my experience, my individualistic experience of what I went through, But by owning that individual experience, it continues to bring me to this anchor that I want to be there to support my daughter through any other type of experience that she might go through. I haven't really conceptualized exactly what it's been showing me recently. That's the best way that I can put it. I feel like you said, you're 20, you said 23 years, right? And that's still
Yeah.
coming back to you. And I'm sure there's still something that you're reliving for a reason. So it's like 12, 13 weeks in. I'm like, I'll be very curious to know what that reminder is going to be for the next 20 plus years.
And you also just encapsulated what it's like to be a mom, because you are, in how you describe that, you're ready to park that in a way so that you can be present for your daughter to make sure she's not affected by what you went through. And that's what we do as moms, right? That's what we do. That's what we were made for. And I think part of also the evolution of being a woman and being in the motherhood space is also recognizing that we have to take time for ourselves and take care of ourselves. And certainly our mental health is super important when we're raising little ones. And I did end up going to therapy. I did talk about a lot of what had happened with my daughter, and it does help being able to process that grief. And it is interesting though. I don't feel it as strongly. I don't want you to feel like in 23 years you're still going to be feeling it like you feel now. It's different. It takes a different shape and form. But I do think that the whole birth experience is something we as women, it's something that bonds us all. And I still, even now, I talk to my really good friends, and that's one of the things that comes up. We talk about our birth experience. It still happens 20 plus years later. It's something that bonds us, and it's something that we as women really feel like it becomes part of our DNA in a lot of ways. And so having that community is part of how we heal in a lot of ways. And I will say, I do get a little jealous of my friends that are like, oh, my baby popped out in 5 minutes. I'm like, really?
I'm going to mention, I want to come back to that identity piece because you just mentioned identity again. And I feel that is really the influence of our conversation and what we have to share. But I want to come back to how that can still sting, especially talking with other moms. We're in community,
Yeah.
regardless of if it's people that we're in community with online, our family, our friends, local businesses. Community is such an integrated part of our lives, but I'm realizing that it becomes even more integrated when you become a mother because then your access or opportunity to community expands even more. And so naturally, in community, you talk about your experiences because you want to find commonality with one another or you want to meet each other at different levels, whether you have really unique experiences or if you have diverse experiences, but you can find commonality within the story that you're telling. And I will say it is rough to hear how some families' birth experiences just go so simple, so joyful that it just seems blissful on the outside. But we know that what might look like bliss to one person, it might not have been blissful. It's always this interesting parallel or paradigm, the way that we view things. But it does sting a little bit when you have conversations and you're like,
That's the grief, right?
yeah.
That's the grief that comes back, and we feel like we were cheated. We were cheated out of what we think is this blissful experience, and we will never know what happens behind closed doors, certainly. And social media now presents everything's blissful, everything's picture perfect, and I truly wish the best for every mom. I want every mom to have that wonderful, healthy, no complications. I truly want that for them. My takeaway from that is, though, I do wish as women that we were more transparent about what really is happening, because I think it only helps us all as women for us to understand what the possibilities are, and that not everything looks perfect and not everything is perfect behind closed doors. And I think we do a disservice to each other when we are presenting something that really is just false on the outside. Birth is complicated, and there's emotions, and there's the potential for so much to go wrong, and it's a miracle when it goes right. And I'm always thrilled to hear about my clients' birth experiences because no matter how it goes, I get to be a part of helping them celebrate or helping them mourn what they didn't get. And I feel like that's a really cool place for me to be because as women, that's what we should be doing. We should be lifting up all the time.
I feel this is where what you had mentioned previously, the society component, comes into play. Again, we're talking about how things might look on one side. It's not perfect, it's not blissful because we really don't know what the experience was like behind closed doors, let alone as women, we go depths in our own mind and our own emotions, and we are examining our past, present, and future viewpoints in birth, or at least that's what it was like for me. The whole time as I was in labor, I kept thinking about the birth plan that I had wrote that I had spent so much not physical energy on, but mental energy on and emotional energy. I wanted a very specific birth plan. I kept it very simple as far as bullet points, but emotionally there was a particular way that I was hoping the experience to go. And so as I needed to make very vast quick decisions without emotionally really understanding how I felt about needing to make those decisions in the moment, I kept thinking about how I had to slash all of these little things off the birth plan within seconds, and then things just kept shifting and pivoting. And so it's just, it's a very complex experience.
Absolutely. And I do feel like it does go back to this societal expectation that, and we're hearing more and more about it, even more now, about the role of women. We're here to procreate. This should be the most natural thing in the world. This should be easy for us. This is what we were made for. And I feel like this narrative is so pervasive and it does color our birth plans and it does have an influence on our expectations going into it that, well, yes, of course, this is supposed to work the way it's supposed to work. I'm a woman, I have a uterus, I'm supposed to be able to give birth and it should not be a problem. I'm supposed to have my baby latch on within 5 minutes of birth because that's what my breasts are for. It's fascinating to me, and so many things, and we could talk for hours about this, but so many things come back to these societal expectations of women and the narratives that have been in existence for far too long. And I do feel like some of the guilt and the shame that so many women carry with them comes from that. And my hope is that eventually we as women can recognize that and start changing the narrative, because we as women are so strong and so powerful and so brilliant, and we need to start owning it, and we need to own our power and own that things aren't always going to go through no fault of our own, going to go the way we want to in birth, and it's not our fault.
It's not our fault.
It's
Such a
not.
powerful reminder. If
Yeah.
anyone needs to create a mantra, just use those simple words.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. This is perfectly leading into that identity component because you're helping shift the identity through photography, through how you're working with mothers. And I can speak from my own personal experience. Being able to walk through your doors the first time that we met, it felt like I was seen immediately. I could pour my heart out to you. I knew that in some way there was just this level of comfort that I knew that you would understand me before you even shared your own personal story. And so when you're working in such a vulnerable environment, and let's be honest, working with photography is vulnerable because you show up in your real, authentic form to get some of the best photos. Sometimes you get the best photos when you're not overthinking what you look like, having your makeup perfect, having your hair perfect, having the perfect outfit, or having your baby act perfect that day to get photos.
Which doesn't always
Sometimes,
happen.
sometimes, and I'm laughing because we know that was very much our experience. Sometimes The most beautiful thing is finding the environments where you can leave all of that out the door and you can be in your raw, real form. And I feel that that is what you create for your clients because that is what you created for us.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That is my goal because a lot of times moms are coming in within a couple of weeks of giving birth, and we all know how vulnerable that is. And very few women feel at their best during those first few weeks postpartum. What I tell my moms, because we have a lot of touch points along the way, I tell my moms if you can get a shower in, and there's no pressure, even if you can't get a shower in, but if you can get a shower in, literally you have nothing else to worry about. We've got your hair and makeup, we've got your dress here, we've got everything your baby needs. We really want this to be such a place where you can breathe and hold space and just be, and you can be with your baby. And I am not really even that big on posing. I want interactions, and I just want you to be with your family, and I'll capture it, and I can capture that legacy for you. As you know, those first few days go so quickly, and those first few weeks go so quickly. And it's funny, like your session, obviously it was like 4 hours of your poor sweet little girl. She was not having it that day. And it happens. I mean, it certainly happens. And it's funny because I felt like in my mama heart, I felt the disappointment that you had leaving my studio that day. And I know it was complicated by your birth journey, and you felt robbed in that. And then you felt robbed with these first pictures, and I knew it. And I don't know if you recognize this. I did not reach out to you right away. I wanted to, and I wanted to check to see how you were, but I also recognized that you probably needed time. And I think I had that right, because I think you needed time to process that and process your grief over, again, not getting what you thought you should have had, and you should have had it. And it just wasn't in the cards that day.
For everyone listening, I'll give just a little bit of context. There is an article, depending on when the episode goes published and when I'm able to get the article up, but it is an article talking more about the birth experience and what I was not prepared for. And it's going to be written in the context of what I think other moms should just be aware of on how certain complications could potentially happen and what I did in the moment to follow my intuition the best that I could and what I thought was right at the time. But as far as the start of postpartum, I experienced a delayed postpartum hemorrhage 6 days after giving birth through an emergency C section. And during that time frame, that's usually when moms will do the newborn photos within the first week. And so 6 days in, I went through a pretty traumatic experience at home, had to be rushed to the ER, was then admitted to the hospital again for 3 days. I had to be away from my baby during such a crucial time when I was trying to get acclimated at home and bonding with a newborn. And so my recovery time, and I'm going to speak more from the post traumatic stress of that experience, that really was a lot of my recovery. The birth experience and the C section recovery, that immediately was wiped out of my existence at that point. I had to come back from the trauma that I had experienced from the hemorrhage, and that lasted 4 weeks. When I'm talking about that time frame of 4 weeks, it was a matter of trying to keep my anxiety at bay without feeling triggered that it was going to happen again if I went down for a nap and woke up, because that's exactly what happened. I slept to catch up on sleep, woke up, and then I woke up to the most traumatic experience of my life happening. So I had to overcome that for a very long time. So, any other newborn planning to capture the beautiful pictures, it could not have been a part of my experience because I did not have the emotional, physical, or mental capacity to plan for anything outside of my own well being and my own survival at that point. And so I know that our session came at such a later time. But what I loved is you did provide me with the confidence and the courage before it even started that whatever was going to happen was going to happen. We were going to trust the process, we were going to go with it. And although it was challenging that day, and yes, I was mourning. I mourned the whole ride home. I was reliving, like you said, how I felt robbed. I felt robbed of time. And I allowed myself to feel that. That's the depth that I have is I allow myself to feel all the grief and all the emotions, but it really was heavy. But I will say, shifting into the positive, when you shared that album, I was not expecting that we would have that many. I was amazed. I was like, wow, these photos do not match what the experience was like for me and my husband trying to keep her calm and settled so that way we can get some photos. I was amazed. So transformative. And now we love those photos. We've already printed one out to have at home. There's another one that we're getting printed to put up on our bookcase. And then there's even more prints to come.
That warms
Just
my heart.
brilliant.
And it's interesting because the individual solo sessions all happen within the first 10 minutes of the 4 hours. Those are like, that was before the dam broke open. So thank goodness that she had that 10 or 15-minute window where she was more curious and less mad about being there. And we were able to get that. And part of what I explained to you too, my process is very baby led. And I don't put a time limit on my newborn sessions for that very reason. And so it's not common for my sessions to go 4 hours, but they do. And if baby needs to feed, we let baby feed. If baby needs to snuggle, that's what she's going to get. It just wasn't her day. But I'm so glad that you got something that can commemorate such an important time in the family's life.
They're just absolutely beautiful. You have a beautiful studio too. And I will say to bring awareness to how you work with clients, being able to offer getting hair and makeup and having the outfit there, I will say that alone is so valuable because it took the pressure off of me that morning to stress again what I was saying earlier about how I would look, how my hair would look, how my outfit, if it would show up right in the photos, if it would match my husband's well, if the babies would match. Like, those are just the things that anybody who's getting photography done, they naturally think about because we're creating these moments in time through photos. And if we don't feel like
Mhm.
we are ready, we could analyze those photos for years to come based off of the
Mhm.
slightest imperfections. But if we're given an opportunity to even leave all that out of our experience, check it at the door, not even think about it, we're not as likely to overanalyze them when we see the photos. And so looking at the brief little shots that we got of me and my husband, I was like, wow, I'm not even overthinking my look or my experience because I know I got to get pampered for the first 30, 45 minutes of that. I didn't have to think or stress about that myself. My stressors were on the baby and being calm and collected enough to take photos of.
Yeah. And your focus absolutely should be your baby. It shouldn't be you. You shouldn't have to worry about anything. And I have this, I wish I would have brought it with me, but I have a booklet that I send to my moms. And there's this write up about how important it is for moms to take the photos and be in the photos because so many moms are behind the camera. And I can speak for myself too. I'm in not as many photos as I should have been with my kids growing up. And part of that is I really, really believe that moms need to be in the photos and it shouldn't matter what your weight is. Your children don't care. They love you no matter what. And me offering that hair and makeup and offering the wardrobe is part of taking some of that weight that we carry as women about, oh my God, what am I going to look like in these photos? I want to take some of that off and I want them to be able to really be present in the moment and not always in our head. Because I've been there a million times. We have that little soundbite in our head going on about, is there a roll here? Or is my double chin showing? We all have those internal voices. And I don't want my moms to feel a minute of that. I want them to feel beautiful and I want them to feel relaxed. And I want them to be focused on being a mom. That's the most important thing that they're doing at the moment.
I think we haven't really hit upon a lot of the origin story about what inspired you to become a photographer as a whole, but really put the focus on newborns and families. I know that we talked a little bit off camera about how you've dabbled in some other forms of photography, but what really inspired you outside of being a mom yourself and going through that process inspired you the most to specialize in niche in this main focus for moms and families?
Well, I did start out in 2009. I did dabble in motherhood photography when I first started. And I realized pretty quickly that motherhood photography is a niche that should not be entered in lightly. It is not a form of photography that anyone starting out should just jump in and think that they have it down. And I also recognized really early on that I wanted to provide an experience for the moms based on my own experience as a mom. And with young children at home, I was not the kind of mom that was going to be able to throw myself into taking care of other moms when I was a young mom myself. I knew my limitations. I have severe ADHD, and it was not something I knew I could be really, really good in one area, and I didn't want to shortchange either. So at the time, I started really focusing on families, and I did a lot of graduating seniors. And graduating seniors became one of my largest niches. I don't want to say it's a very easy niche, but they don't require a lot. They are ready to embark in the world, and they are fun and excited, and they are just a joy to photograph. And so I found myself gravitating towards that. And I did families and seniors for quite a long time. And then as my kids started going into college was when I thought, okay, this was about 2020 where I started to decide I am starting to feel like I now have the bandwidth to do what I really want to do, which is the motherhood realm. And so I slowly started opening myself up to that and really putting a plan in place as to what I wanted my studio to look like and what I wanted my individual approach to look like and what I wanted my moms to feel with working with me. And so I wrote all of that down, and I had a mood board, and I was ready to really put that together. And I started off with a studio I was sharing with another photographer, and I slowly started building that niche. And then it wasn't until this year where I basically just manifested my new studio. The current place I'm in right now, it was not available for lease. It was in my current building. It was the exact space I wanted. It was the exact size. It was the exact location. Everything about it was perfect. And I'd actually never even walked inside, but I knew it was perfect. And it was kind of a really funny thing. And right around that same time, I was starting to really focus on manifesting things in my life. And I contacted the property manager of my building, and I said, I would like to move into Suite 124. And he responded and said, Suite 124 isn't available. And I said, okay. And this was back in March or April. And I said, okay. I said, will you please let me know if it comes up for lease? But after I had that conversation, I started telling everybody I'm moving into Suite 124 in June. On June 1st, I'm going to move into Suite 124. And for me, it made sense. And I can't even explain it, how it just made sense. I was going to move into Suite 124 on June 1st. And I had my husband come over, and we walked by, and I said, this is the spot. And he even asked me, have you even been inside? And I said, no, but I can see the diagram of it online. I know exactly what I will do with this space, and it was going to be mine. And I told all of my friends, I told everybody. And then on May 10th, I got a call from the property manager, and he said, it's so weird. Suite 124 just came up for lease. Would you like it? And you can move it on June 1st. And I said, as a matter of fact, yes, I would love to take it. And so that is how I manifested the space. And then from that point on, I absolutely knew what I wanted the space to be. And I had visualized it so much, and I had dreamt about it so much. And I had put mood boards together, and then I felt like, gosh, this is my chance to really put this together to be my dream space. And I spent all of June doing it. And one of the things, like my family, they call it the blitzkrieg, and it's part of my ADHD where I hyper focus. And so even my kids will be like, oh, mom's blitzkrieg, and we need to leave her alone because she just goes in and you won't see her for a while. And that's what I did with this space. And so for all of June, I was so hyper focused on making the space what I wanted. And now it is literally the dream space that I had always dreamt it was going to be. I could not have asked for a better space.
Every time I hear this story, it gives me all of these just fuzzy feelings. We talked about this when I came to see your space because I was like, this is so beautiful in here. And you were like, I basically attracted this space into my life. And I'm like, tell me more because I love manifestation and the law of attraction.
I hadn't even been doing manifestations for that long, but I was dabbling in it a little bit. And it was, I don't know, it was kind of pretty interesting for me to jump right in with this kind of space, but I did. And I can't even believe, like, I still am like, wow, I literally just brought this into my life. It's kind of crazy.
Those are those moments where you're like, this was the right place at the right time. But I feel that was also just a manifestation of the clarity that you were receiving of the career and the focus and the intention behind why you wanted to do what you wanted to do. Sometimes when we follow our purpose so clearly and so intently and so passionately, it's like stepping stones on a path. They are more steps and more stones put in front of you, the more clear of the direction that you get. And so I feel it was the physical part that needed to manifest for you because you had already been doing the work to get crystal clear of the why and the purpose of your business.
I definitely spent some time thinking about where I was even 5 or 6 years ago and really taking a look back at the breadcrumbs that were put in my path. And I say that to my kids all the time. You evaluate the opportunities that present themselves as they do. And almost always I've been able to look back and say, wow, I was being led on a path to where I am now. And it also gives me goosebumps because it really does feel like not only have I been manifesting this, but it's also, I feel where the universe wants to take me and where I feel like I was meant to go. And I'm a big believer in honoring those signs when you see them in the moment. And I also tell my kids, if you make a decision, you pick up a breadcrumb and that breadcrumb leads you on a path where you're not feeling good about it, then you're good to switch, pivot. We can always pivot from our direction, but you don't always get a redo on taking advantage of those opportunities as they're presented to you in that moment in time.
Absolutely. For everybody who is still tuning in, I would love to invite you if you are in Southern California, so anywhere in the LA area or Orange County or even San Diego. If you're looking for a newborn photographer, I highly suggest connecting with Jennifer. Her studio is located in downtown Tustin, which coming to your studio was actually the first time I had ever been to downtown Tustin, and it was so quaint and it had this eclectic, comfortable energy to it. And I was telling my husband that we need to go over there. There was a couple of restaurants and that coffee shop you and I were talking about that you favor all the time. I really need to come over and try that and then shop around in their boutique as well. But anybody who is looking for, again, an incredible experience that goes so much deeper than just getting newborn or family photos taken, this is a perfect space and a perfect relationship to have with Jennifer.
I thank you. I have loved getting to know you better and I look forward to more shoots together.
Thank you. Me too. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we hop off?
If there's any takeaway from this, it's that women need to honor their strength and their power. And I want every woman to re-examining the narrative that's out there. If I could have one mission in life, it would be to help women to see that they are the owner of their stories.
That is an incredible mission, and I will advocate right behind and
I know
alongside
you
you.
will. Yes, you will.